And without casuals, your sport cannot grow. It's destined to die. And my goodness, the Final Four ratings, it is something else. Now I understand hardcore supporters want to wear that as a badge of honor, but what really are you bragging about if your sport can't grow? Folks, ESPN PR. Friday, ESPN delivered the third best women's basketball national semifinals in 30 years. You see this right here, South Carolina, Texas, 3.6 million viewers.
10 million viewers just disappeared from women's basketball overnight. That's not a typo. The women's Final Four ratings absolutely collapsed without Caitlin Clark on the court. What happened when Paige Bueckers stepped into the spotlight instead? The numbers tell a brutal story that the WNBA needs to hear.
Now, before we take a look at these numbers, what you're going to hear, the narrative is, oh, well, Caitlin Clark fans don't care about women's basketball. I find this rather interesting. Now, tell me again how it's everybody else that moves the needle. Tell me again how Paige Bueckers moves the needle. Somebody explain that to me exactly. I would love to know. Number one, hardcore fans are birthed out of casual viewers. Number two, if you don't get casual fans in every sport, your sport is destined to die.
The viewership freefall proves what many have been saying. Caitlin Clark isn't just a player. She's a phenomenon that transforms the entire sport's appeal. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. What made Jordan, Magic, and Bird so special wasn't just their talent, it was their ability to get people who didn't even care about basketball to suddenly become diehard fans. They weren't just players, they were cultural phenomena that transformed the entire sport. The NBA wasn't always the global powerhouse it is today. Before these icons came along, basketball was struggling for mainstream attention.
UConn's Final Four matchup this year dropped by over 10 million viewers from last year's matchup against Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes. UConn, UCLA, 4.1 million viewers. And that's fine. All right. Hey, pretty good rating. That's cute. It's a pretty good rating. Right there. 14.2 million viewers last year to 4.1 million this year.
Now we're witnessing the exact same pattern with Caitlin Clark. The proof? Just look at what happened when she left the stage. The ratings collapsed for the women's Final Four without Caitlin Clark tells the whole story. Last year with Clark running the show, viewership exploded to unprecedented levels. This year without her, total freefall. Think about it. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird saved the NBA when it was on life support in the late 70s. Their rivalry brought millions of new eyes to the sport. Michael Jordan took it to another stratosphere in the 90s. Suddenly, everyone and their grandmother was watching basketball. Clark is doing the same thing for women's basketball right now. The numbers for this year's Final Four are absolutely brutal. We're not talking about losing a few casual viewers. We're talking about a mass exodus that should terrify everyone investing in women's basketball. Networks paid billions for these broadcasting rights, and now executives are watching in horror as those investment dollars potentially go up in flames. You know what's crazy? Some people actually thought Paige Bueckers would seamlessly fill that star vacuum. Don't get me wrong, Bueckers is phenomenal, a generational talent in her own right, but the viewership numbers expose a harsh reality.
And really, when I made my comment a minute ago, I was addressing this comment right here. So the cult of Caitlin doesn't actually like women's basketball. Color me shocked. In case you are not paying attention, that's 10.1 million less viewers compared to last year. 10.1 million? Sorry, that's a fact. For a long time, it was only Magic and Larry. All right? Then Michael came along. Now, keep in mind, I mean, there were other real stars of the NBA at that time.
She simply doesn't have that same magnetic pull that makes people who've never watched women's basketball before suddenly clear their schedules to tune in. Jordan didn't just attract basketball fans, he made basketball fans out of people who previously couldn't care less about the sport. That's the Clark effect. Casual sports fans, people who had never given women's basketball a second thought, were suddenly glued to their screens when she was playing. And just like when Jordan retired, those same viewers disappeared in droves once she was gone. The stark contrast between this year's and last year's numbers should be a massive wake-up call. All that talk about women's basketball finally making it needs a serious reality check. The sport wasn't necessarily growing. Caitlin Clark was growing and she was bringing millions along for the ride. Now we're seeing exactly what happens when that star power exits the stage. You know what's actually hilarious? All those marketing experts and sports analysts who were claiming the tide has finally turned for women's basketball. Well, the tide sure turned quickly, didn't it? Right back out to sea the moment Caitlin wasn't playing. That's not sustainable growth. That's the definition of a temporary bubble fueled by a singular superstar. Television networks are panicking right now, and for good reason. They invested in women's basketball, expecting the Clark phenomenon to translate into sustained growth. Instead, they're watching millions of viewers vanish overnight. This is exactly what network executives feared, that they were buying into Clark's star power, not necessarily into women's basketball as a product. The NBA knows how this works. They've been through it before. When Jordan took his first retirement, NBA ratings plummeted. The league had become so dependent on his star power that his absence left a massive viewership void. We're seeing the exact same scenario play out right now in women's basketball. The WNBA better be taking notes. UConn has traditionally been the powerhouse that carried women's basketball viewership. For years, they were the team casual fans recognized, but even with Paige Bueckers leading UConn to the Final Four, the ratings weren't anywhere close to what we saw with Clark. That speaks volumes about the unique magnetism Clark brings to the table. Remember when Tiger Woods made golf viewership skyrocket in the late 90s and 2000s? PGA Tour ratings would literally double when Tiger was in contention on Sunday compared to when he wasn't playing. That's exactly what we're seeing with Clark. She alone can double or triple viewership numbers just by being on the court. The hard pill for the women's basketball establishment to swallow is that all their institutional advancement, all their hard-fought progress over decades, still doesn't match the impact of one transcendent star. That's not a criticism. It's the reality of how sports viewership works. One magnetic personality can do more for popularizing a sport than years of gradual improvement. Let's face the truth. The WNBA is sitting on a gold mine with Caitlin Clark. She's not just another rookie. She's the bridge between women's basketball staying in the shadows or stepping into the spotlight. The league needs to go all in on marketing her unique appeal that clearly resonates with both die-hard fans and those casual viewers who might normally skip women's basketball. If the WNBA doesn't capitalize on Clark's star power now, those millions of viewers will find something else to watch. They've got a small window to turn her popularity into sustained growth. What do you think? Is the WNBA doing enough to promote Clark? Drop your thoughts below.